baby girl right there. Ooh, she with her friends. I'm a dog, I ain't shit. I'ma wind up hitting her friends. Bad guy, outlaw. Ooh, I'm like Pac, but I ain't die after the second time I got shot.
What's good? This is your boy Tico Tren, and this is Tico's Depth Scythe, basically. This one's going to be about several different things because I've thought about it for a while and I haven't done a Depth Scythe in a while, so I decided to do one today. The topics for today are going to be, let's see. The topics for today are going to be men and women, price of tea in China, voting, and propaganda. Those are all going to be together, unfortunately, because I was talking to somebody early in the morning, and they just basically popped into my mind, basically, when I was talking to them, because they truly sounded like idiots. Cronyism, capitalism, and communism, as well as NWO, and where Russia is pretty much on the list too to talk about. So those are going to be the topics for today. I'm going to start off with the whole entire voting thing, men and women, price and tea of China, voting and propaganda, basically. My whole entire thoughts on that thing is, if you as a human being don't know how to figure out propaganda, or you're propagandized, or you don't know the difference between, if you can't discern propaganda, I don't think you should be allowed to vote, to be honest with you. That's just me. That's my honest belief on it. If you can't tell the difference between what propaganda is, or if you can't tell if you're being propagandized, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. It's sad, it's true, but it is what it is at the end of the day. Because there's a lot of idiots out there that, that are so propagandized, they don't even know that they're being propagandized. There's so many people out there doing the most dumbest, ridiculous stuff in the whole entire world and don't even realize that they're doing it. It's sad. It's very sad. And case in point, I was talking to a girl on the Past the $40 live stream this morning. And I was explaining to her the whole entire thing about propaganda. So I was trying to teach her about all the propaganda and how it's bad and how it affects society and other people, and how it affects the whole entire male female dichotomy, and she didn't understand it. So I got into basically try to break it down, and I used basically different ways to basically elaborately explain it to her, and she still wasn't getting it. And I remember I basically went from one thing to the other thing, and she goes, "Well, we're way off topic. I don't understand how this all connects." That's the point. It all connects. It all connects, basically, is what I explained to her. It's all the same thing, and all the propaganda basically comes back to the same thing, and that's how it affects everything. Well, I don't understand how that affects everything, because that's a lot. Well, it's a lot because the propaganda comes in that fast at you. You don't realize it's coming in at you. Half the time, you don't even realize you're being propagandized, sadly, is what I told her. Well, she goes, "Well, I'm not propagandized." I go, "Technically, you are." And I started explaining how she could possibly be propagandized, and I basically went on to say something to the extent of, case in point, when I talked about African Americans, she goes, "Well, first off, I don't, just because you're black, I don't like when people that are black, not from African, that are not African American, to speak on the African American thing." I go, "First off, you're an idiot, and secondly, I have citizenship in both countries, so I can speak on anything." "Well, no, you can't speak on the African American thing. Where are you?" I was like, "Actually, if you want to get technical, my family is actually from Florida. We basically got dropped off in Florida." I was like, the only difference between you and everybody else is you got dropped off last, we got dropped off first. And it was the country that basically bought us here that differs from everything. You can pretty much tell the difference between that based on the country who brought you here versus the country who didn't bring you here. Typically, and I basically explained the family, how my family basically migrated from Florida to, you know, Central America for all intents and purposes, because they seen the writing on the wall and they basically bounced. Well, why did y'all leave? Well, yeah, because we didn't want to be slaves, basically. And last I checked, the Spanish slaves were actually on America's soil before the British slaves. That's why Florida was a thing before everybody else. It was established by Spain. So I basically tried to explain that to her, and she didn't really get it. And it was like one of those things where it's like, I had a watershed moment where I realized, I had a TFL moment when I realized, yeah, maybe people shouldn't have voting rights. Maybe not just women, but there should be a lot of people that are so propagandized that they shouldn't even have voting rights, sadly. And it's so sad to watch people that are so mentally messed up and so propagandized that they don't even know their ass from their head, basically. And it's sad to watch. And it's just one of those things in particular. And I never really quite understood why people always got caught up in this stupid shit until I was actually trying to explain propaganda to a woman, basically. And I literally thought to myself, if you can't discern what propaganda is, you don't have the right to vote. Which brings me to my next point on voting when it comes down to it. Because a lot of feminists will say, well, we fought for women's right to vote. Actually, no. Women were allowed to vote if they own land. So before feminism was a thing, people who own land and property were allowed to vote before this. So you're not bringing something new. You're just basically regurgitating stuff and making yourself feel good with the feel good Kool-Aid, basically. When in fact, women who own property and women who pay taxes and women who own a lot of stuff basically did get to vote. Typically how that works. It's sad, but it's true. But it's one of those things that bothers me when I hear people say dumb shit like that. And this is why I was saying, the whole entire propaganda and voting thing, if you can't discern the difference between propaganda, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. That's my personal belief on it. I don't give a damn if you're a guy or a girl. If you don't know what propaganda is and you've been propagandized, you shouldn't be allowed to vote at all. I'm sorry. It's across the board now. Just now. Because I can't stand people who always get caught up in the messes and then they want to pretend like nothing's happening or everything's great or everything's fine, and when it's really not fine. It's a cold reality of the day, sadly, when it comes down to it. And people just pretend like it's not happening once it comes down to it. Another topic that I wanted to speak on is the whole entire communism, capitalism, and cronyism topic, along with NWO, New World Order. There's a video that's circulating around on the YouTubes that literally say Ukraine is fighting for Ukraine, and they're also fighting for, the New World Order. It's typically how that works. And it's funny that comes up at about this time, because I remember a bunch of speeches where Putin was actually against the New World Order and he was fighting against the New World Order. And it made me laugh for a little bit, because we always talk about how communist countries are bad. When you really, and the sad part about that, I realized I watched a few speeches from Putin before this whole entire thing broke out, like years ago, like 2000s, 2004, 2005, and so on, where he was literally speaking out against the New World Order. And he was saying he would do everything in his power to make it so that the New World Order can't come to pass, sadly. Which is pretty interesting that he said that in a speech. He said he basically would do everything in his power to make it so that the New World Order can't come to pass. And I've always found it funny how, when it comes down to it, we always talk about communism and it being a bad thing, but it's funny how the one communist country that's actually in it is in it again to be against the New World Order, sadly. Now, I'm not for communism, but last I checked, New World Order is a bad thing. I really don't want to be a part of it. I really don't really care to be in it. And if a country is willing to fight for it, I'm willing to support that country, sadly. If they're willing to fight against it, that is, sadly. And he was one of the few countries that actually spoke out against it, sadly, even though he is a communist country by standards. Which brings me to the whole entire capitalism, cronyism, and communism. And the neat thing about those three things is we always talk about, you got communists that'll sit up here and talk about capitalism being so bad when in fact it's just nothing more than cronyism. Or as people like to refer to it as crony capitalism. The sad part of, I typically like to break them up because cronyism is its own little category within itself, sadly. So I don't like to put crony capitalism I don't like to put crony with capitalism, basically. So I typically just call it cronyism. Because capitalism is fine by itself. The minute you start adding cronyism to capitalism, you basically make it worse, and you make it so that the wrong people are profiting, and the power's in the wrong people's hands, sadly, when it's crony capitalism. Because typically you can pretty much buy yourself out of shit or pay to have a politician to do some shit for you, or slap some money in another politician's pocket, and shit could change for you. A couple standards or regulations could be changed. Things along the lines of that can be changed. Let it be your taxes being lowered to the regulations for whatever the heck you got your company doing can be changed, so you don't have to pay as much money for regulations or to follow regulations or pay fines for these regulations, sadly. And that's the problem with cronyism. Because I typically refer to it as cronyism. I don't refer to it as crony capitalism, because capitalism is capitalism by itself. Cronyism is when you start trying to take an ideology and turn it into a certain thing, and it starts looking more like communism than it does capitalism, or you start basically trying to be stingy or selfish, and or trying to collect as much money as humanly possible off the backs of other people, ironically. What's up, D-Man? What's up, Shinobi1? What's up, past the $40? But you typically start trying to take money off of things and people that, that you don't deserve to take the money from, sadly. And this is where cronyism comes into play. I don't like cronyism. I don't really care what you call it. You can call it crony capitalism. I pretty much refer to it as cronyism. I don't like it at all in the least bit. But at the same time, it's one of those things that are necessary evils, so you can actually be able to point it out. Because the sad part about that is just you kind of sort of need a bad guy, or you need something to point at so you can determine that this is bad and we don't want this shit, basically. And the sad part about that is we don't got too much of that in this world. And a lot of the stuff that we do point out as bad ends up being good. Kind of like what I was saying about the whole entire video that's circulating around the internet about the whole entire Ukraine's fighting Ukraine and are also fighting for the New World Order. Now, like I said, last I checked, I'm not for the New World Order. And last I checked, Putin has always spoke out against the New World Order, and he's always pretty much vowed in a lot of his speeches to go against the New World Order at all costs if it costs them anything, for all intents and purposes. Now, I don't have any beef with that. If you want to go against the New World Order, I don't give a damn if you're a communism. If you're going to go against the New World Order, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm 100% fine with that if that's what you're going to do, sadly. So if that's the case, then shit needs to go down, sadly. I may not like it, but sometimes shit needs to go down for the betterment of, I don't know, the world or the betterment, period. That's my whole entire view on it, and that's my take on it. I don't really care who dies as long as the New World Order gets delayed or, doesn't make it to see the light of day. I'm perfectly fine with that, if that's what he's actually doing. Along the lines of that, yeah, and it's true. You need the bad to put what's actually good, what's inherently good, into perspective, ironically. It's typically where morals actually come into play. When you look at morals and you look at, how you make split judgment and how you make a decision, you make it based on your morals, your moral compass, or your moral guidelines, or your morality, for all intents and purposes. You make it based on your morals. And A lot of times you're going to make decisions that you don't necessarily agree with, that don't really fit your morals, but you know it's for the greater good for all intents and purposes at the end of the day. It's sad, but it's true. You question when MSM paints a picture of the bad guy, especially the last 2 years. Well, yeah, the neat thing about it, that's pretty much falls into the propaganda thing. And I've never been one to fall in for the propaganda. I've always been one to find the truth, search for the truth, and figure out what's actually going on. I've always been one of them people to follow the money people, or the, figure out what's really going on type people. I don't really like to actually take things at face value. I like to dig a little deeper and find out what the heck is actually going on, why it's going on, why it's the way it is, how we got this far, why it could not be done differently, why everything is done the way it is, sadly. This is typically how I always operate. What's up, America's DeVille? Yeah, it was. It is. And it will always be. Yeah. Like you always say, question everything. Trust no one, question everything. I've always said question stuff. It doesn't matter if you believe the person wholeheartedly. It doesn't matter if the person's a credible witness. Sometimes you got to question it so you can learn more about yourself and learn more about the topic. It's pretty much the nature of the beast as far as like growing and being a better person and coming along as a human being, ironically. I've always said that. I've always been a great backer to, think for yourself and always think for yourself and go investigate no matter who it is, what it is, and why it is. Even if it's me, even if somebody else, go investigate, sadly. Because sometimes people may get shit wrong. Sometimes people might leave out something. Sometimes people might forget an important piece of information or important detail. So always go and, check and double check that person and check and double check in general is my motto when it comes to stuff like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of times when you do investigate stuff like that and you do it yourself, it may lead you to more questions that need to be answered. So that means you got a deeper rabbit hole to jump down and investigate more or to learn about for all intents and purposes, which is a good thing. Because at the end of the day, human beings are known to want to learn. The minute you stop learning, that's when you start getting fucked up, basically. It is. It is what it is. But back to the Passive $40 the Passive $40 stream. I don't got nothing against Passive $40. He's actually a good guy. But when you're trying to explain propaganda to a woman for about an hour, you realize very quickly that certain people shouldn't be allowed to vote. Because it's very easily to propagandize people at the end of the day. And if people believe a certain thing, or people believe that, or people don't pay attention to their own surroundings, you typically wonder how the heck how the hell they got this far in life, and two, are you blowing smoke up my ass because you don't see this shit actually going on? And it's one of those things that really bothers me for people, because people see what they want to see, and the internet basically helps them see what they want to see. It's kind of like if you do a Google search on a topic, you can find anything that supports your argument no matter what, because it's Google. On both sides or all sides, sadly, you can find anything that supports your argument, or something that is propped up by something fake to support your argument on Google, sadly. Like, case in point, I can literally argue till I'm blue in the face about the gender wage gap, even though I know it's false. If I pull it up online, there will be some shit online that will back this fucking argument for no reason whatsoever, just because propaganda. And that's pretty much how propaganda works. It's kind of like the case in point in propaganda when it comes to the pink tax. Women still think they pay this pink tax when in fact they really don't. You're basically paying for the materials and shit that goes into making this shit. If you want to pay cheaper for shit, you might want to pick different shit. Quit picking pink shit, because it takes too much energy to make that pink shit. It sucks, but it is what it is. I always found it funny how people are willing to pay. Case in point, when it comes to pink things, Susan G. Komen, the Susan G. Komen Foundation. Nobody complains about paying pink tax when they buy up all this pink shit to support this shit. You ever notice that? Nobody complains about the pink tax then, but we want to complain about it on some damn razors or some other stupid shit because we don't feel as though, we should be paying this extra money. But the sad part about that cost got to go somewhere. It costs money to make this shit. It costs energy, time, gas, and money to make this shit. So if you're paying more money for some shit, either go for something cheaper or shut up and keep paying for it. It's that simple. These are the things that bother me when it comes to people. It blows my mind and it pisses me off to no end. And it makes no fucking sense to me. And it's people like this who believe this dumb shit who shouldn't be allowed to vote. I don't give a damn if you're a guy or a girl. You shouldn't be allowed to vote. If you can be propagandized easily and you don't understand what propaganda is, I think you should lose your right to vote. That's just me. Y'all can take it the way y'all want. I don't care if you're a man or a female. I don't care if you're Apache helicopter, transgender, whatever the hell you are. If you don't understand the whole entire thing of propaganda, you shouldn't be allowed to vote in my eyes. I'm sorry, because sometimes you got to be smart to actually do some voting, because you'll get people into dumb shit that people don't want to be in because your feelings. Never vote with your fucking feelings. Vote with your fucking mind. Think about the shit, then vote on the shit. Don't be out here, I feel as though that this person's a bad person. Okay, we really don't give a damn what you feel. It's all about what the policies are. We don't care that the person looks sexy. We don't give a damn if the person got the hot wife. We don't give a damn if the person looks sexy on a walk. No, that's not voting for a leader. That's fucking a beauty pageant. If you want to vote on a beauty pageant or you want to vote on shit like that, go vote on American Idol or go vote somewhere the fuck else, basically. When you go to the election polls, you basically vote based on policy. You don't vote because you feel as though your feelings are hurt by this person. No, it doesn't work like that. Sometimes you got to accept shit that you don't want to accept. Sometimes change is good. Most times change is bad, but sometimes change is good if it's done in moderation properly at the end of the day. I get tired of hearing people say dumb shit on a regular basis and expecting me to co-sign on the dumb shit. It is what it is. So I personally believe if you can be propagandized pretty easily, or you don't understand what propaganda is, or if I got to spend an hour explaining to you how propaganda is bad, you don't deserve to vote. Here's the best thing about that whole entire thing, me trying to explain it to this person. My son, who is about 6, understood what I was saying, but this grown-ass woman understood nothing. She even went on to say some dumb shit like, well, we're off topic. What does any of this have to do with anything? It's all propaganda. It's all different types of propaganda. Well, I understand how this all is connected. Oh my God. If you don't understand how this is all connected, then you shouldn't even be speaking on this topic at all. And this is typically where the whole entire mindset of what's the price of tea in China got to do with me? Everything. Everything. The economy's all connected. It has everything to do with you. If the gas goes up in Ukraine, the gas goes up across the world. If a war breaks out, gas goes up. If some foreign country we never heard of decides to lob a missile some damn where, shit, there's reverberating effects to that shit. The world is connected. It is what it is, whether you like it or not. Well, it has nothing to do with me, and that has nothing to do with me, and that's besides the point. No, it has everything to do with you, because when you take your punk ass to the store to go purchase some shit, and you realize shit's a little higher than normal, and you don't make enough money, then you're out there reeing that minimum wage should be upped again, you pretty much know why. You pretty much ran into the problem on why, what the price in tea in China have to do with your dumb ass. That's typically how that shit works. And I hate when I hear black people say that shit, or anybody say that shit for that matter, because you're just being stupid. You're not understanding how foreign policy works. You're not understanding how any of this shit works. You don't even understand the whole entire world on an economic level. If you're going to say dumb shit like that, you're not understanding any of the policies that affect you in a negative way around the fucking world if you say dumb shit like that. It is what it is. And that shit bothers me when people do shit like that and say shit like that, because that lets me know that that person's ignorant. And a person that can't learn nothing or doesn't want to learn nothing, or they just want to live in an ignorant bliss. These are typically people that don't believe they should be allowed to vote at the end of the damn day. Because you'll just make the economy fucking worse. You'll make the world fucking worse. And you'll rule the world with your fucking feelings, basically. I can see that now. North Korea wants to rock pink nukes, and all of a sudden now you're upset because they're rocking pink nukes now. Now you want to go bomb North Korea because they want to rock pink nukes because your feelings. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. It will never work like that. But it's one of those things that bothers me when it comes down to it. And when it comes down to it, it always talks about the difference between what's good and what's bad, and what's actually good and what's actually bad. And I've always found it funny when we see other countries do shit, we always want to rally around another country. But the sad part about that is, how do you know that country is actually in the right? Just because there's all this TV propaganda, that don't make it right. Hell, America's been known to lie about shit when it comes to certain people that they want out of power. I seem to recall a lie about Saddam Hussein ripping babies out of fucking incubators and throwing them on a foreign NICUs. Sad part about that is, when they actually went to go investigate that actual story, the NICU wasn't even fucking open at that hospital. Oh my God, that's shocking, I know. And it's shit like this that bothers me, that people will buy into because propaganda, and you want to feel good and you want to feel bad, and you want people to back you on the dumb shit that you're about to do, basically. So you got to use propaganda to get people to back you on dumb shit or a dumb idea that's going to cost them more money for a long time or a short time, or for any matter, for all intents and purposes, or have reverberating long-term effects on that person. And it's one of those things where I don't understand how people fall for this shit very easily. It's kind of like the Nigerian prince scheme. Literally people fall for this propaganda like the Nigerian prince scheme. Now, the sad part about that, there's some smart motherfuckers that fell for this shit. Some people that claim they're the smartest in the world that fall for this shit. Elderly people always fall for shit like this, sadly, because they feel bad or they feel as though that they need to help somebody, sadly. And a lot of times women fall for this dumb shit because they hear Prince in the title, so all of a sudden now they think they can get somewhere or do something because the person got Prince in their fucking title. It's the nature of the beast. That's typically how a lot of this shit works, and a lot of times people fall for this scheme. And the sad part about that, there are people till this day who know about this fucking scheme, read about this scheme, who still fall for this shit. Now, me personally, if you're one of those people, you shouldn't be allowed to vote at all. You shouldn't be allowed to vote any damn thing. Hell, you shouldn't even allowed to be vote. You shouldn't even allowed to be able to raise your hand to basically vote for a color change, basically, let alone a stop sign in your fucking neighborhood. I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that. If you're that stupid, you're that stupid. These are things that bother me to no end when it comes to people. And the sad part about that is, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, to talk about the difference between who's the good guy and the bad guy, it's kind of like what somebody was saying in the chat about they hated to see who they painted the bad guy for the last 2 to 10 years, basically. The sad part about that is that's pretty much a propagandized image of what the bad guy is. last I checked, when you get a serial killer, he typically doesn't look like none of those bad guys. He's typically the youth group leader, the Boy Scout leader, the loving husband, the doting husband, and father, shit like that, basically, or the pastor of the church, or the deacon of the youth group, or anything along those lines. When you actually get a serial killer, and the sad part about that is when you hear people talk about it, oh, this shocked the neighborhood to the core. I would have never thought that it would be this person over here that's an upstanding citizen of our community, and this, that, and the other. You hear the same story over and over again. It's starting to sound like a fucking natural disaster and people losing everything. Literally how it sounds to me. It's kind of like those people that are shocked at a hurricane that rolled through their town last year, and a year before that, and a year before that, and the year before that, are shocked that another one rolled through their town again, and they lost everything again. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to see you on the news next year, dumb bitch. Like, I guess it's okay. So it's one of those things that bother me, and it just blows my mind how people can get on TV and say, I've lost everything, and I can't believe I lost everything. Bitch, you said this last year, and the year before last, and the year before that, and the year before that. You literally said this shit multiple years. How about you move? How about you just get up, pack your shit, and move? You can't cry about the same topic or the same thing over and over again if you're not going to change it and you're not going to make a difference. Which brings me to my next point when it comes to people. Don't complain about some shit you're never going to change. If you're going to cry about shit and keep on withstanding the shit and keep on going through the shit, you don't have the right to cry about it or complain about it. Because now you're enabling yourself. You're being an enabler to yourself, basically, and you're wasting my fucking time because you're not going to change anything in the first damn place, or at all, period. And that shit bothers me to no end. And the sad part about that is when it comes down to it, when you vote for people, you don't vote because you hate somebody that's in office. You vote because you vote for logical, sound reasons. You don't vote because your feelings got hurt. You don't vote because the person doesn't understand your plight, or the person doesn't look like you, or any of that dumb shit. You don't vote because of stupid shit like that. You vote because the person's doing good, despite the fact that you may not like the fucking person. The person's still doing good for the community. The sad part about that is, last I checked, the last president, despite the fact that everybody hated him so much, and that's probably why they hate him so much, because unemployment was at a record low for all communities across the board. Now, to me, that sounds like a great thing, because that sounds like everybody is going back to work. Why would you want people to be unemployed? And that's a problem, because this is where the whole entire dichotomy of, if you don't have any victims, you don't have anything to complain about. So you need victims so you can have something to complain about, so you can make yourself sound valid or have that soapbox to stand on. It's very hard to complain that black people don't have anything when black unemployment's down drastically. It's very hard for black people to have any gripes or complaints when black unemployment is down, period. So what are you complaining about? That the fact that you got to work? That sounds like some lazy shit to me. You're just being lazy, basically. It's one of those things that bother me. It kind of reminds me of the women when in North Carolina, when they raised minimum wage to $15 an hour at McDonald's, and they all wanted to cut their hours so they can keep their subsidies and public assistance, basically. They literally all cut their hours so they can keep their public assistance because they don't want to pay for shit. And if they have to pay for shit, they don't believe they should have to. They believe that the government should finance their lives, despite the fact that they make enough money to finance their own damn life. Hell, there are women right now that make $100 over the limit to actually get public assistance, that literally cut their hours just so they can get public assistance. It kind of reminds me of the people who get the bariatric surgery, who will go for the bariatric surgery to lose weight, or they found out that they don't weigh enough. They don't weigh enough to be on bariatric surgery, so they gain all that fucking weight just so they can go on bariatric surgery. when in fact you could have lost all that weight and then have to worry about being on bariatric surgery. And this is the type of society that we live in. People who do dumb shit like this on a regular basis. And we wonder why our society is the way it is. Yeah. Laszlo got this at 6 years old. 7. I'm sorry, no. Laszlo's 8 now. I'm sorry. He literally got this shit. And the sad part about that is it blows my mind how a grown-ass woman don't understand this shit. But my grade school kid understands all of it. Like, think about that for a second. Hell, I'm willing to bet any money if I sat down with my toddlers long enough, they would get this shit. If you know what I mean. And it's just shit like this that just blows my mind and it doesn't make sense at the end of the day. And it's, yeah, basically what D-Man said. Propaganda is basically perpetuating and creating crises. So people could feel like they're needed or people could feel like they're doing something for somebody, basically. Case in point, black unemployment was down for the longest time under the Trump administration. How do we reverse this? Oh, COVID, pandemic. Now people can't go back to work if you don't get the shots or the poke. Or people can't go back to work, or everybody's got to be unemployed and all the businesses got to downsize because COVID or anything along those lines. Basically, they have to do all this stuff to basically make it so that they can make it in life, or reduce the chances of you catching COVID. They're willing to pull out all the stops to do it. Let it be you shutting down your businesses and never being able to open it back up again, to downsizing the staff at hospitals, to closing up quote unquote non-essential places, despite the fact that you open the liquor store but the bar can't be open. My favorite thing during the pandemic, and I think I talked about this multiple times, was the bar couldn't be open, but I can get a lap dance and drink beer. Let that shit sink in. The bar can't be open, but I was able to get a lap dance and drink beer during COVID. Think about that shit for a second. I can go to a strip club, but I can't go to a bar. I wonder why. Does it have something to do with females and women making money? Maybe, if that. If so, we don't want to affect the women's. Oh, no, we don't want to affect the women's. So it's perfectly fine for strip clubs to be open, but bars to be closed. Despite the fact that we're supposed to be social distancing, I can get a lap dance and drink a beer. Despite the fact that there's social distancing. Let that shit sink in. Let that shit sink in for a hot second. I can get a lap dance and a beer, despite the fact that we should be social distancing. Does that make sense to anybody? Does that make sense to anybody? We're social distancing, but I can get a lap dance and still drink beer, despite the fact that it's not safe for bars to be open because there's shit can happen with COVID and people can get sick. But I can have a dancer strip in front of me and bounce on my lap basically all fucking day, and nobody even complains about it. Nobody bats an eye about it, and nobody says nothing about it. Because apparently, I guess COVID can't be transported by strippers or, transferred by strippers, basically, I guess. I guess strippers are the safest thing in the world. I don't know. But the sad part about that is it happens. And it blows my mind. And it makes me wonder, how the fuck does this shit actually happen where a bar could be closed, but a strip club could be open? Or certain things are non-essential, so you basically shut down somebody's livelihood for the sake of propaganda. Really? How does that work? The sad part about that is the famous quote that was going around during the lockdowns and the shutdowns of various businesses is, this is the first time they locked everything down. 60% of the businesses that are closing won't open. That was like the famous quote for the longest time during the first lockdown. 60% of the businesses that are closed won't reopen their doors. We didn't lock down one time. We locked down 2 times. We ain't just locked down 2 times in certain places. We locked down 3 times in certain places. Sometimes, some places they got locked out 4 times. So you can imagine the many businesses that would never open their door again. You kind of figure the first time, 60% of those businesses didn't get to reopen their door. The second time, 60 more percent of those businesses never got to open their door. The third time, if you had to lock down for a third time, 60% more of those businesses never got to reopen their doors. So there's a lot of people out of jobs, a lot of people who would never be able to get their livelihood or make the money that they want to make, or be able to own their own personal business, basically, their own private business, sadly, because of lockdowns and people's fee fees. I've always found it funny how it's my body, my choice when it comes to, pregnancy and shit like that. But when it comes to somebody not wanting to get a fucking vaccine, they should be forced to get it, or it should be mandatory, or they should die if they get COVID. It's like, wait, how do we make this jump? At what point do you jump this far to say that a person deserves to die because they don't want to do something that you don't agree with? And then go as far as to say 9 times out of 10 or 10 out of 10 times the people that are unvaxxed are probably Trump supporters. Don't do no investigation. Don't even check into what the fuck you're talking about. You just talk sideways out your fucking mouth, and come to find out, most of the people that are unvaccinated are blacks and Latinos. Not every single last one of them are Trump supporters. Hate to break it to you. Blacks and Latinos, the very people who you're quote unquote love and want to protect from, the patriarchy, you're basically saying they deserve to die because they don't get the vaccine. If you know anything about American history, you would know why blacks and Latinos are very hesitant about getting vaccines. Tuskegee Airmen, anyone. And many more things like that to come. And it just blows my mind when this leftist propaganda leaves somebody's fucking mouth and nobody fucking questions it. Or it leaves their mouth and it's perfectly fine. But anybody on the right was to say some shit like that, we'd probably be like tried as terrorists or thrown under a fucking jail some damn where. Not in the jail, under the fucking jail. Or maybe in Gitmo. Because we said the exact same stupid shit that this dumbass said, basically. The only thing different is because your political leanings are different, you deserve the harshest punishment under the sun because somebody's feces got hurt. We live in a world where people don't even know if they're male or female or a fucking fire hydrant. Yes, a fire hydrant, because it sounded funny. Like, this is literally the world we live in. We got kids, and I've always found it funny. Kids aren't old enough to pick their fucking bedtime, but they're old enough to determine their gender. They're not old enough to drink or smoke, but they're old enough to determine their gender. They're not old enough to cross the fucking street by themselves, but they're old enough to determine their gender. They're barely old enough to read a book by themselves, but they're old enough to determine their gender. At what point does that actually make sense? At some point. How the fuck does that make sense to you? So what you're trying to tell me is my son Laszlo can't drink, he can't smoke, he can't barely cross the street by himself, he can't drive, he can't own a driver's license, he can't sign up for selective draft, he can't do any of this shit. He can barely cook a meal because he's not old enough to cook a meal by himself. He can't stay home by himself. He can dress himself. He can't graduate from high school, and he can't drive a car. He can't vote. He can't participate in a lot of the adult activities, but he's old enough to pick his gender. Make that make sense to me. He's not allowed to cross the street. I can't even leave that little nigga home by himself without legal ramifications. But he's old enough to pick his gender. How does that actually sound logically sane? How does that sound logically possible? I can't even leave him home alone, but he's able to pick his gender. Or my daughters for that matter, my toddlers for that matter, they can barely feed themselves. They're like toddlers. They can barely turn their sippy cup up. They can barely walk, but they can pick their gender. They don't know how to tie their shoes, but they can pick their gender. They can't read, but they can pick their gender. What? They can't write their name on a piece of paper yet, but they can pick their gender. They can barely roll over. Well, as far as Scythe is concerned, she can barely roll over, but she can pick her gender. She can't even pick her head up, but she can pick her gender. Can somebody make that make sense to me, please? Like, make that make sense to me. Make that fucking make sense to me. Because it makes no sense to me at all. Like, it just makes no logical sense. How we can make these leaps and jumps to all this bullshit when people aren't even old enough to smoke. Not old enough to sign up for selective draft, not old enough to even drink, not old enough to drive, can't even stay at home by their damn selves, can barely feed their damn selves, but they can make sane, logical decisions to change their gender. I don't understand it. I'm flabbergasted right now. It's shit like this that blows my mind. And it makes me wonder how far gone society really is. Like, how far gone is really society at this point? Like, we're not even allowed outside without masks on in certain cities. But the rates of COVID are still going up. And you're blaming non-vax people despite the fact that they need a passport to go out to eat. Some countries, some cities, you need a passport to go to the fucking supermarket. Your vaccine passport to go to the supermarket. Like, but rates are going up and we're blaming unvaxxed people despite the fact that they're not really even allowed outside anymore. I'm not understanding how that works. Like, make that make sense to me. And it's shit like this that just blows my mind that we just let go. That we just let come out people's mouths. They always talk about science, but this makes no scientific sense to me at all. None of this shit makes no scientific sense to me at all. So you're trying to tell me that my daughter Scythe, who is barely 3, can choose her gender, but she can barely pick up her head, read a book, tie her shoes, take care of herself, smoke, drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, smoke weed, any of that shit. Can't even drive a car, can't even tie her shoes, can barely even brush her own damn teeth. But she's old enough to pick her gender. That's some interesting shit if I've ever heard. And it's things like this. It's shit like this that just blows my mind when it comes down to it. On a lot of the bullshit that people can say and get away with. Plus, I love how the double standards work when it comes to women and men, sadly. So you're telling me that you can record a woman doing some illegal shit and we'll just give her a slap on the wrist? But if we record a man, we don't got to record a man doing the same shit. He's getting thrown under the jail, even if it's true or false. Never gets his life back. Can't even pick up his can barely pick up the pieces and move on with his life because he's always seen in that negative light. But we want to treat a woman like she's innocent and she's an innocent bystander, despite the fact that she committed a horrific crime. It's kind of like that one teacher who was sleeping with a student, and her defense was that the student came on to her. Her defense was her student kept on trying to come on to her. Now, mind you, she's a married woman. And she's sleeping with minors. Instead of taking responsibility, which is kryptonite to women, you blame your student for coming on to you. Now, I know a lot of kids in high school that I went to high school with that hit on a lot of teachers that never got the time of day, never got play. Used to press up on teachers, used to try to hit on teachers, used to try to flirt with teachers, used to try to buy teachers nice shit, and they never got the time of day. So you mean to tell me that this one person who's not even as attractive as any of these other people, seeing some fancy shit to make you lose your clothes and want to sleep with a child? Like, what? What? Like, come on now. Come on now. And a shit like this. What's up, Destroy Dating? That kind of reminds me of the fat people who I see at Walmart sitting in the buggies that are made for old people that can barely walk around Walmart. I don't know when being fat became a disability. Like, honestly, don't know when being fat became a disability. No, I'm not picking on fat people, but at what point did it actually become a disability? Now, I can understand if it became a disability if you can't walk anymore, then we can talk about that. If your joints are blown the fuck out and you can't walk and they're all destroyed, then that's understandable. But if you literally walked your ass from the car to Walmart and jumped on one of those buggies and rode around Walmart and then got up and walked out Walmart, you need to be shit slapped. Somebody should hit you with a car. Like, no shit. Because that's somebody's grandma or somebody that's actually disabled that could have used that. That's somebody with MS that could have used that card. That's somebody's grandma that could have used that card. That's somebody's great-grandma that could have used that card. That's somebody's child who's actually disabled that could have used that card. But we using it for big people because they're too lazy to walk around the fucking store. At what point did laziness become a disability? Laziness is a choice. It actually is a close cousin to procrastination. Procrastination or laziness isn't a disability. It's a life choice. It's kind of like what the one comedian said, or one of the people said. At some point, you got to the point where you couldn't reach your back. What did you do? Did you go and try to change the shit and make it so that you can reach your back again and go on exercise? No. You decided to just get bigger and give up on your life, basically, and just get bigger. It is what it is. That's typically how a lot of that shit works. Like, I'm in the same camp as Joker when it comes to clothes. The minute my clothes can't fit me, I don't go out and buy new clothes that can fit me. Unless I'm losing weight, then that's a whole nother story. And 9 times out of 10, I'd probably get them bitches taken in before I actually buy some new clothes. But the only way I'm buying new clothes is if I lost too much weight or too much too much of my body mass to be able to fit any of those clothes anymore. Then that means I'm buying it for a positive reason, not a negative reason. I am not buying clothes because I got too fat and I can't fit them anymore. To me, if I see that shit and I wake up one day and that shit is a thing, that means my black ass need to hit the treadmill or hit the gym. Maybe walk a mile or two, basically. That's what that means to me. I'm not finna go buy some clothes that are bigger for no fucking reason when I can lose the weight. Just as simple, if I'm just as determined, sadly. Because the sad part about that is, for you to get that big, you would have to be as determined as I am to be healthy. You have to be that determined to be lazy. You really have to have the willpower to be lazy, basically, at that point. And accept the fact that you're lazy to not want to lose weight at that point. If you can't reach your back anymore, or if you can't reach body parts anymore, or if you never see your dick, if you don't see your dick for like years on end, you basically became lazy enough to actually get to that point. And that's sad within itself. And that's typically how a lot of that shit works. And no, because the sad part about that is you don't have to choose fast food. You can choose other things, but you choose not to. Fast food is a choice. Fast food is a major choice. The sad part about that is, I will admit, I do go to fast food restaurants, but the only thing I get is fries. That is the only thing I buy at a fast food restaurant is fries. So I'm literally making a conscientious decision to buy me some fries. But the neat thing about that is the difference between me and you is I'm well aware of that I probably went over my calories with these fries. So I'm well aware of the exercise I have to do to actually get rid of those calories that I just packed on. Typically how that works for me. And no, it's not fat shaming because I want to lose weight. I just like to be healthy. Because ironically, if you know anything about black people or African Americans or black people in general, there's these things called high blood pressure, cholesterol, and diabetes that plague that race based on the stupid shit that they eat on a regular fucking basis. I don't want to be in that category any fucking where. I don't want to be in that category anywhere at all. I don't feel like having high blood pressure, diabetes, or high cholesterol at all. It's not in my cards to have it, and I refuse to have it, so therefore I don't want it. That's typically how this shit works. What's up, Corey? And it's shit like this that just blows my mind to watch dumb people do dumb shit and get themselves in even dumber shit for no fucking reason whatsoever besides the fact that you just want to be either lazy or you want to be in your feelings. And two things I hate is lazy motherfuckers and motherfuckers in their feelings. It is what it is. But when it comes down to it, like I was saying about the whole entire propaganda, when it comes down to it, always investigate shit. Think for your own fucking self. Don't let people think for you and quit using talking points all the fucking time. I don't give a fuck if you're a feminist. I don't give a fuck if you're a part of the manosphere. I don't give a fuck if you're a part of any fucking thing. Form your own opinions. Form your own facts. Form your own thoughts. And go your own way. What's your thoughts, basically? It's that simple. That's what it's supposed to be about. And being a better human being in the process of doing so. Ironically, nobody wants to do that. And it's true, Corey, still. High blood pressure doesn't give a damn what color you are. Diabetes don't give a damn what your color is. Cholesterol doesn't give a damn what your color is. Ebola doesn't give a damn what your color is. The flu doesn't give a damn what your color is. It's the nature of the beast. None of those things give a damn what your color is. At the end of the day. But this has been Tico's Death Scythe 5. Y'all be good, be blessed, and have a good one. And remember, always investigate shit yourself. Never ride with somebody wholeheartedly on some bullshit, basically. Always be willing to investigate and hurt people's feelings, because it's better to hurt somebody's feelings and find out what's actually right and wrong than it is to be wrong and have egg on your face because you follow somebody blindly. I'm just saying. But y'all be blessed. Have a good night. This has been Tico's Death Scythe 5. Y'all be good to yourselves. Shalom. Adios. See ya.
That's my baby girl right there. Ooh, she with her friends. I'm a dog, I ain't shit. I'ma wind up hitting her friends. Bad guy, outlaw. Ooh, I'm like Pac, but I ain't die after the second time I got shot.
Do diamonds on me, go flash this a Snapchat. Got my baby mama that do intake.